My name is Linda. I'm 49 years old. We were at my grandmother's 95th birthday party when my husband leaned in and whispered, "We are leaving." Something is very, very wrong. I remember the moment clearly. The backyard was full of laughter. Old gospel music floated in the summer air, and the scent of roasted lamb wafted from the grill. My cousins were playing dominoes. Kids chased bubbles on the lawn, and Grandma, still sharp as ever, sat on her favorite wicker chair wearing a light blue dress with white lace. Her eyes glowed with joy, and yet Matthew's voice was cold, urgent. I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. His hand gripped mine tightly. That's when I noticed his knuckles were white. He leaned close again. "We have to go, now." I glanced around. Everything looked normal. Then I saw it. A black car, parked across the street, engine running, tinted windows, the kind you don't notice until you do. My heart skipped. "Is this about the loan?" Matthew didn't reply. He was already standing. I followed, grabbing my purse and our coats as discreetly as possible. My brother Paul saw us and frowned. "You're leaving already?" "Emergency," Matthew said, pulling me toward the gate. Paul's eyes narrowed. "Does this have anything to do with the calls I've been getting?" Matthew didn't answer, but I already knew. And as we crossed the street, that black car slowly pulled away, just enough to let us know they saw us. We didn't speak until we were inside the car, doors locked. Matthew gripped the wheel. "They found us, Linda." The drive home was dead silent. Not even the radio dared to speak. I stared out the window, trying to breathe normally. The streets looked the same: trees, porches, wind chimes. But everything felt off, like we'd stepped into a different version of our world, one where danger was suddenly too close. Matthew's knuckles never relaxed from the wheel. "Can you tell me what's happening now?" I finally asked, my voice low. "They called again this morning. Different voice, no accent this time, just instructions." "Instructions?" He nodded. "To bring the documents and to stop pretending we don't know what they're talking about." I felt sick. It had started months ago when Matthew got involved in a high-yield investment group. It was supposed to be private, exclusive, a friends of the bank opportunity, as he called it. Promises of passive income, tax shelters, even foreign accounts. At first, it all seemed above board. Then came the silence and the missing funds. "How much did you give them?" I whispered. He hesitated. "Too much." "How much, Matthew?" "Almost everything." I couldn't breathe. Our savings, my father's inheritance, the house equity we'd used for that strategic refinance, even the new loan from the church's credit union, gone. I turned to him, heart pounding. "You said this was safe." "It was. It was supposed to be." He looked broken, not scared, ashamed. Our home came into view, that familiar front porch, the rusted mailbox, the chimes that always sang when we came home from church. But today they were silent, and I knew this was no longer home, not with what was coming. We barely made it through the door before the phone rang. Not my cell, the landline, the one only telemarketers and old friends ever called. Matthew froze. I walked toward it slowly, each step heavier than the last. The caller ID said, "Private." I picked up. "Linda," the voice said, calm, male. "Did you enjoy the birthday party?" My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" "You know who we are. We've been patient, very patient, but the window is closing." "What do you want?" The voice shifted, like a smile you couldn't see. What was promised, or what's left of it? Matthew grabbed the phone. "She doesn't know anything. Talk to me." Click. They hung up. We stood in the hallway, the late afternoon light casting long shadows on the floor. "Matthew?" I said slowly. What did you sign? He didn't answer. I pressed him again. Was it just money, or was there something else? He turned away. I didn't think they'd come after us. I thought I could fix it before they noticed. How, Matthew? By doing what? He looked at me, eyes full of guilt. They said it was a real estate fund, overseas. They promised if we added more capital, we'd get it all back. Double. I used your name. I staggered back. You used my name? I had to. They said they needed a co-signer to release the second phase. I thought I could fix it with more lies. Silence. Then he whispered, I thought God would understand if I was just trying to save us. My voice trembled. That's not how this works. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt like a warning. Every car that passed outside made me sit up and listen. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was how it started for people who end up on the news. Missing, desperate, forgotten. Matthew was on the couch, pretending to rest, but I could hear him shifting, sighing, mumbling prayers he thought I couldn't hear. By morning, we had a plan. We have to go to the bank, he said. If we freeze everything, maybe they can't touch it. The bank? After what you've done? I have to try. We drove in silence again, but this time I noticed a second car. Gray, new, too clean. It turned when we turned, parked when we parked. Inside the bank, everything felt wrong. Too polished, too slow. The clerk took our information, then stepped away to verify the system. When the branch manager arrived, she smiled too much. Mr. and Mrs. Rains, could you step into my office for a moment? I looked at Matthew. He nodded. We followed. And that's when she said it. Mr. Rains, your accounts have been flagged for irregular international transfers. Our fraud division has already contacted the authorities. What? Sir, did you authorize these transactions? He looked confused. No, well, yes, but not fraudulently. She folded her hands. Unfortunately, that's not how the system sees it. We have to report this. I stood. So you're saying we're criminals now? Her smile faded. I'm saying you're not safe here anymore. When we left, the gray car was gone, but something had changed. They weren't just watching, they were waiting. The letter arrived 2 days later. No return address, just our name, printed in bold. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a Bible verse, handwritten. The borrower is slave to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. And below it, a message. You were given a chance. Now the debt is no longer financial. I dropped the letter. Matthew read it and said nothing. We sat there in the kitchen, surrounded by silence thick as smoke. The ticking of the clock was unbearable. Then my phone rang. It was my brother Paul. Linda, someone came to my job, asked about you, said they were from the foundation. I didn't believe them, but they knew things. About Dad's inheritance, your mortgage, even the kids' school. I could barely respond. They're threatening our family now, I said, looking at Matthew. Paul's voice turned hard. What did you get us into? It wasn't just us anymore. That was the turning point. I packed a bag, one for each of us, grabbed my mother's old cross necklace, tucked into the side of my purse. We'd worn it when we buried her. I hadn't touched it in years. Matthew followed me wordlessly, eyes lowered. We can't run forever, I said, but we can hide for now and pray for a way out. He nodded. They'll find us. Maybe, but if we stay, we'll lose more than money. As we left the house for what might be the last time, I whispered the verse again. The borrower is slave to the lender, but I added something else this time, and I will not be a slave anymore. We drove without destination. No GPS, no phones, just paper maps and gas station coffee. Each town looked like the last. Quiet streets, peeling paint, forgotten churches. We found a small motel near a crossroads, cash only, no cameras, the kind of place where no one asks questions if you keep to yourself. That first night, I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Not loud, not messy, just slow, steady tears. Matthew sat across from me, hands shaking. I never wanted this for us. I know, I whispered, but you let it happen. He looked up. What would you do if we don't come back? I didn't answer, because I'd been thinking the same thing. Back home, Paul wasn't speaking to me. Grandma didn't even know we'd left. And the church, our church, was still expecting us to host next week's prayer meeting. Everything had collapsed. And yet, in that quiet motel room, surrounded by uncertainty and fear, something strange happened. I prayed. Not like before, when I asked for blessings and guidance. This time, I begged, Lord, if you're still with me, if you still know my name, show me a way. I don't know how long I stayed on my knees, but Matthew joined me. He reached for my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't pull away. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but inside, we were still, together. The next morning, we drove to a church, a small wooden building, white paint faded by time, tucked between two empty fields. A hand-painted sign out front read, "Come as you are." Inside, it smelled of old wood and something warm, maybe cinnamon. A woman in her 60s greeted us with a gentle smile. "You two look like you've been running," she said softly. "We have," I admitted. "Then you're in the right place." We stayed for the morning service. The pews were nearly empty, but the sermon was full. The pastor spoke about restoration, about how God doesn't fix things the way we expect, but in the way we need. Sometimes, he said, God lets us fall, not to punish us, but to humble us, because pride tells us we can control everything, but grace tells us we don't have to. I felt my chest tighten. Matthew sat still, eyes glassy. After the service, I asked if they had any work, anything at all. The woman smiled again. "We don't pay much, but the food pantry always needs hands." That week, we began working there, stocking shelves, cleaning floors, carrying boxes. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up in fear. Every night, Matthew would write letters, to Paul, to the church, even to the bank. He confessed everything, and every morning we prayed together, not for wealth, not for rescue, but for courage, to make it right, one box at a time, one prayer at a time. It had been 17 days since we left. The phone calls stopped. The shadows faded, but the weight hadn't lifted. That morning, as we sorted canned goods in the pantry, the church secretary approached us. "Linda, there's a man asking for you outside." I froze. Matthew stood beside me, jaw clenched. "Did he say his name?" She shook her head. "He just said, you'd understand." I stepped out into the sunlight, and there he was, Paul, my brother. He looked tired, angry, relieved. "I've been driving for 2 days," he said. "You didn't even tell Grandma goodbye." I didn't know what to say. He walked closer. "You left us in the middle of a storm, and I've been the one getting the calls, threats. Even someone followed my son home from school." My heart sank. "I didn't know it had gotten that far," I whispered. He stared at me, eyes burning. "Of course you didn't. You disappeared." "I was trying to protect everyone," he scoffed. "By hiding?" Then he pulled out a folder. "Lawyer friend of mine dug into the fund. It's a shell. Money's laundered through art auctions, fake holdings. It's deep." He looked at Matthew. "You sign anything else, I'll make sure you go to prison." Matthew nodded. "I deserve that." Paul turned to me. "But you don't, so I'm giving you this once." "What is it?" "Evidence, names, accounts. We go to the authorities, together. You testify. You might get protection." Matthew's voice was barely a whisper. "You'd do that for us?" Paul's jaw tightened. "Not for you, for her." He looked at me, and I realized this wasn't over, but it was the beginning of our fight back. The courthouse was cold, not the temperature, just the atmosphere. Sterile, tense, like truth itself was holding its breath. We sat in a small room off to the side. A federal agent explained the process. Our names would be sealed for now, but the moment we testified, everything could change. Matthew was pale. "You can still back out," I said quietly. He shook his head. "Number, if I walk away now, I'm just a coward in a nicer suit." When we were called in, the room felt bigger than it was. Lights overhead, cameras, lawyers, and one man in the front row wearing a gray suit and a thin smile. I recognized him, the voice on the phone. He looked at me like I was a child lost in a mall. I sat down, took the oath, told the truth, every name, every amount, every false promise, the loan forged in my name, the pressure, the fear. I even read the letter they sent, the Bible verse. Matthew followed. His voice trembled, but he didn't stop. He admitted everything, not just the transactions, but the pride, the greed, the desperation. And when the questioning was over, the prosecutor asked, "Why did you decide to come forward?" I looked at Matthew, then I said, "Because I was tired of being afraid, and because I believe the truth still matters." The room was silent. The man in the gray suit said nothing, but I saw it. For the first time, he looked afraid,